Drop that shit.
Fried him. I mean, just smoked. Holy shit. Holy fuck. Oh my god. Yo guys, what is up? Max on a Borderlands 4 video, and today we're going over my updated guide to AFK Rafa. Now, this is a build that I put out in the first month of the game that allowed Rafa to use his Peacebreaker cannons to delete literally everything in the game. You didn't need to shoot your weapon ever. You just ran around and everything would die. It was incredibly fun, and there's been some more recent discoveries that we're going to be breaking down that even further increase the damage of the build, as well as I made some changes to the skill tree, to our class mod, and more to just make the build even stronger than it was. We now delete bosses even harder, and I think this is genuinely like the fastest mob clearing build that I've played in Borderlands 4, because everything basically gets instantly one-tapped, and your ricochets are one-tapping things, and you can kind of just run around. If you're looking for a build to efficiently farm drill sites really fast, this is a great build for that. Hope you guys enjoy the breakdown. Let's go over everything you need to know. Let's do this. So if you didn't know, there's a few interactions going on that allow AFK Rafa to do the damage that he's able to do. The first of which is using the mixologist enhancement. This reads, guns with Maliwan licensed parts deal 10% bonus damage from the inactive mode's element. Now, this works on single elemental Maliwan shotguns. It does not need to be a dual element Maliwan shotgun, and it incorporates not 10% of your gun's damage. It incorporates your whole gun's damage into your Peacebreaker cannons. So basically, every single shot from your Peacebreaker cannons now deals your Maliwan shotgun's damage. Now, Maliwan shotguns are being used in this build not only because they're high base damage, but also they can roll an attachment called Beam Tosser, right? Let me grab my Fire Beam Tosser. I'm going to put this on. Let's do Beam Team so you can see. But Beam Team is going to make my damage of my things corrosive and shock. I want you to look at how much damage we're doing with fire, though. So there's a 76,000 fire proc from the beams, and you can see that the corrosive and the shock are like a few thousand. There's an 8,000 shock, 1,000 corrosive. The reason for that is the corrosive and shock are just dealing normal action skill damage, while the beam is dealing my beam, or I'm getting my beam tosser basically added to all of those ticks. So we're just constantly hitting with beam tosser damage for basically every tick. It is ridiculously strong. The next mechanic that's happening on this build has to do with the other role on this enhancement, Transfuser. Now, in the original AFK Rafa build, I was just using a purple enhancement. I didn't have a legendary one. There's been a new discovery. I believe Jolts Dude was the first person to post about it, that Transfuser is also working. It seems like Maliwan enhancements just in general seem to work with action skills. I'm going to have an additional video about all the different action skills that work with Mixologist, because there's some pretty crazy things that you can do there. But Transfuser also seems to work with action skills. And it reads, on kill, guns with Maliwan licensed parts spread their active status effect to up to 3 nearby targets. Now, this works with Peacebreaker cannons. So our Peacebreaker cannons, while we're holding out a big shotgun with a bunch of dot damage, like, for example, this Beam Tosser one is like 22,000 dot damage. Whenever we kill an enemy while we're holding a Stellium, if the dot that is on an enemy is a dot that matches the gun that we're holding, this will transfer. It doesn't transfer the dot that's on the enemy to another enemy. It will transfer a stellium dot, meaning it basically just gives us free gun dot damage on enemies around the enemy. And this allows us to get even more damage on already a ridiculous build. Now, one thing that I did note while I was playing this, even though we're like deleting things in their like changes to how ricochets work on certain weapons, like the Midnight Defiance and the Kickballer, I did note that it looks like Rafa's ricochets that used to be dealing like multiplicative damage. I think they were grabbing their bonuses again, potentially double dipping. It does seem like he is no longer getting crazy damage increases on his ricochets. They were looking like they were dealing normal damage versus his damage that he was dealing to a target. However, you still do get additional ricochets on bonus elements. So that's another mechanic that we're going to be taking advantage of. While we're holding a Maliwan gun, we get additional elements. Our Peacebreaker cannons are going to be doing fire. We can make them do corrosive and shock with the beam team. We can make them get extra bonus corrosive damage. We can hold or aim down sight to get bonus shock damage, and all of these things will give us extra ricochets. Those ricochets don't seem to be getting much more damage scaling, but they do still give us additional ricochets, which can hit a ton of targets and give us even more damage. So that is kind of the setup of the build in terms of like the overview. Is we're just going to hold a big Maliwan dot shotgun with beam tosser, and our Peacebreaker cannons are going to be sharing status effects and proccing beam tosser damage on literally every shot. The other change to the build, I still actually don't have a very good Dancer class mod. I need to farm for a much better one. But we're going to be using the Dancer class mod over what we were using before, which is the Instigator. Instigator was really nice. It's still a very good class mod, but I do think Dancer just wins out in increasing our overdrive bonuses and just giving the Peacebreaker cannons even more damage. So personally, I'm using the Dancer. You can still use the Instigator, but I do think Dancer gives us a little bit more damage. All right, now let's go over our updated skill tree. So we're going to be putting points in the first row into Deft Hands. This is one of the only ways to increase Peacebreaker cannons fire rate. Super important. Make sure you put points there. Then we're going Juerga for the action skill restore whenever we deal critical hits. This is also super important for action skill uptime. We are an action skill build. We never want it to go away. Then we're going to Instinto. This is our augment. It's going to give us crit chance and restore duration on kill. It's so good. Definitely a must-have for this build. Then we're going Maestro for extra skill damage, 2 points into El Valiente, so that we get extra damage dealt from all sources. Super nice there. Our beam teams are indirect damage. Our Peacebreaker cannons are like the auto shots are indirect damage. They benefit very much from asymmetric warfare, giving them increased damage and errant spark. Even on like a beam team, they get this bonus incendiary damage, which is super nice. We're also picking up some extra life steal, so we have a little bit of healing, and then lateral plinking for our indirect projectiles to gain a chance to ricochet, which is in addition to the ricochets from auto shot. We'll talk about auto shot versus beam team in a second. I just want to get through the skill tree. Then we're going down to get mainly confetti is nice. We're going to be using the Slippy, which does a bunch of damage inherently, and then we just get it to do even more bonus damage. But we're really coming down here for concentrated buildup to give us a potential of like 200% bonus shock damage. We just aim down sights on bosses. Don't need to do this on anything else besides bosses, but it's just a lot of extra damage. It's global bonus shock damage for us, which is huge. And then we're picking up El Alacron, so that whenever we hit an enemy with a Peacebreaker, they have an increased chance to get a status effect. Remember that they need to be status effect for a dot to be spread to nearby enemies. Otherwise, if they're not dotted when they die, they will just die and no shared damage will be happening. Then we're picking up Barrage. This is mainly to get down to Tamario. Tamario gives us a ton of gun damage. I really would like to get a +5 Tamario class mod. Don't have that yet, but this gives us an F ton of gun damage. And when we proc a Saltado proc by killing an enemy, this just doubles This is a F-ton of gun damage for our Peacebreaker cannons. It's going to give them even more damage. It's going to get them hitting like over 100k per little tick, especially because they're dealing the gun damage from the Peacebreaker cannons, but they're also dealing the gun damage from our beam tosser. So huge buff there. And then actually like a small change that I made to the build is we're actually only going 1 point into Midnight Oil. This 1 point is mainly just to get the extra corrosive damage. We don't have corrosive damage for extra ricochets, but we don't need to like scale our damage off of this. I did try putting points into Diamond Hands. I thought this could have been interesting, a little bit silly, but you could potentially get like 200% gun damage. Unfortunately, the Peacebreaker cannons deal gun damage, so even though you're not shooting your guns, you do drain your stacks of Diamond Hands basically instantly. And so yeah, that is our skill tree. By the way, in terms of using Peacebreaker cannons with the auto shot shotgun Capstone or the beam team Capstone, you can kind of go either way. I found their boss kill speed to be very comparable. They killed bosses pretty evenly. Most of the time it was within a second of each other, whether you were using the shotguns or the beam team. However, for mobbing, I do think that the auto shot Capstone is just stronger. It gives you those additional ricochets. It fires more pellets, so you get more crits, which gives you more refund of your action skill. And it just killed like the drill sites a bit faster because the shotguns fire more quickly, and you're basically one-tapping everything. So if you're firing more quickly there, you're going to be clearing out drill sites faster. But it is up to you, personal preference. They're both really good, and if you really want to rock Beam Team for doing drill sites, you absolutely can. It'll still fry everything. For our weapons, as I mentioned, we're going to be using mainly Stelliums. If you can find a beam tosser on them, just swap to the beam tosser underbarrel while you're running around, and all of a sudden your guns will inherit them. The highest beam tosser I've found, well, technically I didn't find this, I was given it by someone in chat, is 20,000 damage, which is just ridiculous. Allows you to melt bosses, but any sort of beam tosser underbarrel will be great. Note that in order for you to be proccing shared dots to transfer from enemy to enemy, the dot needs to be on the enemy. So if you're holding a like fire stellium beam tosser and an enemy dies to a corrosive dot, it will not then transfer a fire dot. I did note when we were messing around with this that the like dot transfers is not very consistent because we're dealing a lot of different dot damage, but in testing of just trying to focus on like one dot, for example, it still was just worse than doing all the different bonus damages. So it's not something to be super relied on, but it does like increase our mobbing efficiency. For our Repkit for bossing, I use a shiny war paint for the extra movement speed, and also throw on enrage for the extra damage dealt. You could use, honestly, like an enrage with elemental damage increase would be probably better. I just got this war paint, but for bossing, we want something like that. For mobbing, I just run around with a triple bypass with speed. Gives me extra movement speed to fly around. And if our action skill ever does go down, we can, like now with caffeine, triple stab to get our action skill back instantly, which is great. For our ordnance, we're going to be using the Slippy. Until they fix the crit knife, not giving you a set chance to crit, as they're going to be fixing it to give additive. Slippy is nice. We're not actually benefiting from the fire rate increase in the specialization. We're not using that. It just does a ton of damage, a little bit of supplemental damage while our beam tosser is going off. For our class mod, we're using the dancer. You want as many points into Tamario as possible for this particular build. +1 saltado is always great. Saves you an additional skill point. I'm using the Watts for dinner. If you want, you can use the, originally, the first AFK Rafa build, we were using a Fireworks Shield. Fireworks Shield is awesome. It procs. It'll give you more clear speed, but I found getting the bonus damage, especially if you can get Siphon on the Watts for dinner. You do not need Amp on this Watts for dinner for this build. Amp is doing literally nothing for us. You just want a Siphon roll so that you're constantly getting your overshield to get bonus shock damage, which is going to increase your Peacebreaker cannon damage even more. And this just gives us even more boss damage. Big upgrade to the build. And then lastly, for the enhancement, I've got in a transfuser and mixologist. This is obviously very difficult to acquire and find. I'll have some people in the Discord giving it out. But the most important enhancement role on this is mixologist. If you are using a blue mixologist, you will have an infinitely better time than if you have like a gold legendary Mallow on enhancement without mixologist. It is like the #1 piece of gear that you need for this build to work. You don't need a beam tosser. You could just hold a high damage Mallow on shotgun. This build will still work, but you absolutely need the mixologist role for this build to function. For our specializations, I'm using 3 Deadeye, mainly because it gives us stacking crit damage. This is global crit damage. It applies to our Peacebreaker cannons, which is awesome. And then 2 to Action Fist for the 30% increased action skill damage. And then for our specializations, we're going to want to use Contamination. Critical hits grant us increased status effect chance. This is going to give us a massive status effect damage increase or chance increase so that we're proccing dots all the time, which is going to allow us to get even more damage and more mob clear. And then most of the time I'm rocking Now with Caffeine so I can stab myself with a triple bypass if my action skill goes down. Plus, I am a gun and a honed mind for the increased action skill damage. However, for bossing, I will just move this Now with Caffeine over to Bullet Train because we move really fast while we're bossing. Just a little bit extra gun damage to squeak out even more damage. If I had enough points, I'd probably be rocking the best defense for the extra 30% damage, but definitely not necessary. Guys, that is going to do it for the updated build guide. I hope you enjoyed. This build is a ton of fun, and if you plan on farming something for a long time, it's pretty nice having a build that is very low effort, very low, like, actions per minute. You don't need to do a whole rotation every time you want to kill a boss. You just activate your action skill and look at the boss and everything will just melt. One of the most fun builds that I've played. Hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. I will catch y'all in the next one, guys. Take care. Bye.